WIIFTBP.
WIIFTBP. Media's just for you and me. WIIFTBP. Media's just for you and me.
Broken screen? Crash system? Are you in need of spyware or virus removal from your computer? Well, contact RPC Computer Repair in South Shore and let us help you with all your computer repair services and print needs. Need office or print production services, copies, scans, fax, or even notary service? Then stop by and support RPC Computer Repair and Print Shop located 1741 East 71st Street in the 71st Street corridor, newly revitalized South Shore areas, and let RPC be your one-stop shop, where we believe RPC is your PC. RPC Computer Repair is also a UPS access point where you can drop off and pick up your important packages. So let RPC be of service to you. Call RPC Computer Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. through 6 p.m. at 773-966-4457. That's 773-966-4457. Visit RPC at rpccomputeringinc.com for more information.
I press decline and you keep calling me. Give you some love and you want all of it. I'm out here working, nigga, get a grip. I'm just trying to touch a mill and you just wanna coexist. I say you clingy and you contradict. Give you my heart, you think it's counterfeit. Give you my word and you won't trust in it. What's the point of loving me if you don't know what trust is? I need the is you give now. Please don't back down on me. You've got the attention I need. Put your pride aside for me. Oh, 'cause I need that ease. Put your pride aside for me. That ease. While I'm out trying to get that ease. Know that I need that ease. Put your pride aside for me, baby. You're insecure, it's driving me crazy. I'm trying to get it and you keep on saying all my love is never enough. I put up with you for too long. Now I'm shit, I need money. I'ma call it quits. That is. Put your pride aside for me. That is. Why am I trying to get it? That is. Put your pride aside for me. Put it aside. 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 Put your pride aside. Put it aside. On me. Put your pride aside for me.
Yeah. Ooh. I miss your kiss. Oh, your kiss is one of a kind. It feels so nice. Girl, you do it right. I miss. Oh, girl, you don't go too fast. You take your time. Just how I miss. Hey, oh, you kiss it, then I'm drifting off your love. Keeps me floating, girl. I miss.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. This is Tasha Napper here with I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's in It for the Black People Media. Thank you for joining us today. I am here with my guest, Donnie Maxey, today. And Donnie and I have known each other for quite some time. We actually went to high school together. We were in college together and kind of reconnected a little bit as we started talking about kids and all sorts of things as it relates to relationships, divorce, separation, marriage. And so welcome. We're going to talk about that. I'll let Donnie introduce himself in just a moment. But I want to ensure that you are sharing good content. So this is Tasha again, What's in It for the Black People Media on the show I Do, I Did, I Don't. I would like for you to go to share, to like, and to follow both the I Do, I Did, I Don't page as well as the What's in It for the Black People Media page so that you are taking advantage and getting notifications of this fabulous content that is always on this network. So make sure you share, make sure you follow, and make sure you like. And so we're going to get into it because I think we're going to talk about an awful lot today. And we started a conversation which led to Donnie's appearance on the show, really about children and modeling behavior for children as you think about normal relationships and everything that happens in a normal, in a marriage that's not really strained. But also, how do you do that when you're in a strained relationship or marriage, or you're separated or worse, divorced, and it was contentious and you have to still interact with the other party to the divorce, maybe because you still have business to take care of, but also because you have children. And when you've separated under duress or under really difficult situations, it can be really, really difficult to manage that relationship. And to do that in front of kids is, believe me, it can be very, very difficult. And I don't always get it right either. So
nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Good morning to you, Tasha.
Good morning.
Good morning to all your listeners. Parenting is not a perfect practice. There's no parent messiah.
Yes, and there was no handbook either.
No.
So it is not a perfect practice. It's difficult. I think the kids expect it to be perfect. Sometimes we hold pretty high expectations of ourselves, but one thing I tell myself sometimes is I'm the best mom they know.
Well,
I'm the best mom they ever had.
Your children do believe you're perfect because you're their parent.
Yep.
Perfection looks different for mom than it does for dad. We are coming out of being a very binary society. We're very non-binary now. And what we share with our children can't be what our parents share with us. We have to do more because our children are exposed to more. People are allowed to be more human. And that doesn't mean it's just a 0 and a 1. You can't just say I'm boy, girl. That doesn't happen anymore.
We're not the superhero parents anymore. We can actually be human.
You can be human. Human means that you can have mistakes happen, and you can still live through them, and you can correct them, and you can say today no, but tomorrow you can say yes. That's what's going on in the world today.
And so that's a little different than it used to be. How so?
Well, it used to just be do as I say, not as I do.
Definitely heard those words.
Your mores and your values, they have stuck with us for a long time. And a lot of us tend to think that we should abandon our mores and our values instead of letting that be a guide for us. That's the road we walk down. One of the things that my father explained to me is that you might not have thought I was the greatest dad in the world, but I'm way better than my father.
Interesting.
So when we look at our lives now as we are parents now, we have to say, am I at my parents' ceiling? Meaning, is that my floor? Or is that also my ceiling? If we want to do things like break generational curses or whatever you want to call it, generational practices, and adjust our norms, we have to do some things different. That doesn't necessarily mean abandoning everything that your parents did, because I can definitely say, having children and being married, that I understand my father a lot better than I did as a young man, and even in my 20s and my 30s. It's like, dude, I get it.
Yeah.
I love you.
I feel like every person that becomes a parent at some point has that reality check and that sort of, man, I get it now in a way that you couldn't. And it's like everything in life, right? We have to experience it, like truly experience some things to really fully get it. And then we have a different level of appreciation for our parents because we understand the struggle. We understand the choices that have to be made, and sometimes the very hard choices, and the sacrifice of just navigating. And so when, as I'm thinking about sacrifice, I'm thinking again about this, all right, difficult relationship, right?
Yep.
And sometimes I have to sacrifice what I really feel and what my face wants to say and what my what my mouth wants to say for the benefit of modeling good behavior to the children.
Yeah, modeling behavior is very important. Our children spend a good portion of their cognitive life watching people model behavior via school. Parents are their child's first educator. So in those first 5 years, when your child is like a sponge soaking up everything that they see and hear around them, those experiences, they shape them and they become their subconscious. So when you look at your child and it's like, well, why did you do that?
I don't know.
Well, maybe I saw it. I mean, pretty much children have pretty much a blank slate. It's us who pour into our children.
So what I'm hearing you say is that they model and they repeat what they see, and then they repeat what they see. Not necessarily what they're told, but what they see. And they are not even aware necessarily that that's what they're doing.
No, they're like a little canary. So, you say one thing and they're like, okay, in this situation, I'm going to say this. This is why it's important to look at yourself and do some critical self-assessments, and also look at your partner, whomever you're parenting with, or even if that partner so happens to be your parents, and say what's valuable for my child to see Is it valuable for them to see conflict, or is it valuable for them to see resolution?
Interesting, because man, this is hitting me in a lot of places right now, right? As I think about my life and parenting. And yeah, there's a lot we can talk about. So let's start here. Let's talk about what children see modeled in healthy relationships. What do they see modeled in healthy relationships between a husband and wife, or even if they're not married, between their two parents that are in the household?
Well, I want to say, and I don't know how people feel about this in today's climate, the Cosby Show was a great example of how to deal with life, especially with conflict. Like, problems are going to come. Mm-hmm. You can't put your child in a white padded room and they're never going to get hurt. Right. And all they're going to see is sunshine every day. That's just not the way life goes. So
in a healthy relationship, they're seeing...
Healthy is relative.
Very true. Very true. Oh, so let me say it this way. What skills are the children seeing used that they can now put in their toolkit to be effective, productive human beings? So I just heard you say Cosby Show, good modeled conflict resolution, because the conflict is going to come. So they're seeing that modeled in how to deal with disagreements and how to deal with, we disagree, but we still have to move forward. Maybe we agree to disagree.
Disobedience.
And so how do, they're going to see conflict, but they're also going to see a healthy way to manage through that, to Correct. Address it, not ignore it, but to address it, to manage through it in order to still maintain the relationships.
That is correct. So let's say you have a parent that's always yelling at the kids. Mm-hmm. So if you leave that eldest child to watch over the younger child, and now they get to play parent, they're going to model your behavior. So when the younger sibling doesn't do what they want that younger sibling to do, they're going to go into parent mode, and they're going to yell.
Yes.
So it's because not
that's
like,
what parenting looks like to them.
That's what their mind at that stage in their life understands parenting to be. Now they can grow and they can develop and say, I've learned this. I've studied some psychology, sociology, and pedagogy, and all this stuff, and I've learned better. I'm going to do better. Mm-hmm. And then they get in a familiar situation, and their subconscious says, "Whoop, we're going to do this."
So back to being, and now they're an adult. They've decided, right, I want to do this a little differently, but they still respond many times, not all the time, but many times they're still going to respond the way that they did, the way that they learned when they Correct. Were much younger.
So that's either going to be an emergence or an eruption. And it all depends upon what the situation is and what kind of trauma they experienced from that initial experience with that similar situation. It can't not always be the exact same thing, but it can be very, very similar.
So that's an interesting concept. Did you talk about emergence versus, what was the other word you just used? Eruption. And emergence sounds like it just sort of happens in the normal course of life. Eruption sounds like there is a crisis and I'm like just reacting at this point.
There you go. That's the re's, right? React, respond, regret. You go through that cycle and you look at the situation, you say, man, I should have done that differently. I could have done that better.
Yeah.
But something in your subconscious blacked you out, and that primal early stage experience came out, and you don't even know where it came from sometimes.
So this is so interesting, because if you think about children that are young in separations and divorce, and they see now strained interactions that are really difficult, really tense between the two parents, then that's what they start to learn parenting looks like, and interaction with the other sex looks like when you're in a relationship. And so even later on, they may say, I don't want to do this. This is not how I don't like the fact that they're arguing. So let's take an example. You've got a couple, they're getting divorced. They are constantly at each other's throat. They're arguing all the time. There's no way to hide that from the children. And I think, let me just take a little side note here. I think we always believe that we're hiding stuff from the kids, and we're not. We're fooling ourselves. We're believing that the children aren't seeing what's going on, but children operate through their intuition. They have to make sense of their world when they can't really explain, when they don't have the words for it. And so they're feeling whatever energy is there. And they can't articulate it, but they feel it and they're processing that. And we still believe somehow that the kids don't know when things are amiss. I think sometimes the kids know before we know.
Oh, yeah, they have their own intuition. You know, they I remember hearing things through the vents when I was a child. And I was like, I'm not going to be like that when I get older. But in talking about, you know, the arguing with the parents, you still have to look at, well, they must have some triggers.
Yep.
And understanding what your partner's triggers are really helps. Now, you can use that for the good of things, or you can use that to manipulate.
Angel on this side, devil on this side, good or bad.
It all depends upon how you want the outcome to be.
Right.
You can't control a person, but you can control how you behave and how you perform and what comes out of your mouth and how your body responds to the stimulus around it. Mm-hmm. So therapy helps.
Therapy helps.
Therapy helps.
I'm a huge advocate. Absolutely. As you were saying that, I was like, okay, we're going to have to talk about therapy, because you have to understand those triggers. Mm-hmm. You have to understand how to help yourself to not go on. Once you are triggered, recognize it and not go there.
Yeah, I think the last time we saw each other in the flesh, I was on my way to therapy. So, I mean, therapy isn't like a...
That is true.
I'm going to go for a year and I'm going to talk about this one thing and I'm going to be fixed. No.
Yeah.
No.
Because you start uncovering other things. And if you're really serious about doing the work,
right,
then you're going to invest the time and the effort. If you really want to do something different or be different, you realize that it's just like anything. You have to practice it. Mm-hmm. You have to work at it. Yeah. And it's funny that you said that, because I think you were going to therapy and I was going to therapy at the same time, and we happened to like meet in the elevator like, hey, where you? Interesting. Okay, so all right, so let me give you some situations, and I want to break down some examples for folks. So
okay.
All right, so let's start with what a child might see in the home. You've got a dysfunctional, abusive situation happening. So it could be physically abusive. I think most of us already connect the dots there and say, if the child is seeing a physical interaction between the parents in a violent way, that then they're going to take that and that's going to be in their subconscious. And that's how they think about handling conflict.
So it's not a one size fits all answer to that, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody experiences things differently. So if a child sees violence in a household, that could make them become a protector. Mm-hmm. Or they can go out and they can commit the exact same crime.
Right.
Hopefully they say to themselves, I don't like that. But another thing that could happen is that the child will run interference. And they will try to take one parent that they deem is the angriest and try to keep them happy. Mm. Another thing that could happen is that child could go out into the world and duplicate the dysfunction that they see in their household.
So then you have a bully at school.
Not even just a bully, just a angry, disgruntled person, you know, always having a scowl on their face and you don't know why. A lot of times we don't know what happens in people's households because we put on all of our masks and our suits of armor and we go out into the world and it's good morning.
Yes, there's the whole facade of It's put together. Never let them see you sweat. Don't take your business in the street. All of that.
Yeah, and all that stuff stays in here, goes down your back, and as you get older, you wonder why you got all
Joints
these
hurt.
kinks in your back. You seeing every kind of mystic doctor, acupuncturist, chiropractor, doctor taking pills. It's because
but I believe in the chiropractor and the acupuncturist.
I do too. I
Yes.
was just there yesterday.
Okay, cool.
So you have to find outlets. And for a lot of children, they don't realize that their parents keeping them active in sports or even doing house chores or engaging their siblings gives them some kind of an outlet to escape from the trauma that they've experienced. In the errors that so I'll give you a personal example.
Okay.
In the errors that I've made in my life as a parent, what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll have a one-on-one with my kids and say, if you didn't like what I did, if you thought what I did was wrong, process it. And when you become a parent, don't do it. And have a discussion with me when you're ready to articulate what you believe that I did wrong or what you think that I did right. And sometimes an apology is required. Mm-hmm. And if you think that you're too big to apologize to your child, like you shouldn't do that, like it's backwards, that's completely wrong, because you're pouring the right things into your child. You're letting them know how to become accountable.
That's a very good point, and you're also modeling then how to apologize for behaviors, because sometimes I've seen, especially boys and it's not just boys, but there's such this level of competition that they embody all the time that to apologize somehow means that they're wrong and they're not good enough and they've lost. And so they avoid trying to apologize for something as simple as it was totally a mistake. We all know it. And so to just say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. It becomes this mountain to climb for them, and it's just like this personal attack they feel on them. But if they're seeing their dad do that and apologize for the behavior, then it's like, oh, okay, this is what you're supposed to do.
So it can be dad or mom doing that. And I know quite a few unapologetic people, and it all depends. The person you're in a relationship with, you behave differently with them than you may with other people. Some people are consistent. They're the same with all their relationships. And some people, because of how they grew up, they model the behavior that they saw in their household, in their own household.
Right.
I should say in their household growing up, they model that exact same behavior in their household, and they're completely unaware that they're doing it.
Interesting. So this goes to expectations in a relationship and even the roles that we expect the other partner to play, because this is what we saw. Mom worked and came home and made a 7-course dinner and, and looked fabulous the entire time. And so that's what I expect my wife to do. Or, dad, maybe it was dad who worked and came home and made the 7-course dinner and then played with the kids, and this is what I'm expecting my husband to do, which may or may not be realistic in your own situation, but that's what happens, right? So we're creating these tapes, and as parents, we are really imprinting what's on those tapes and those recordings in their head that is going to come out in some way later.
Right.
And so we have a responsibility to make sure that the kids are getting the right things and understanding how to navigate these situations with not just themselves, but with others, because it really is going to matter in their own relationship, but also it's going to matter when in their relationships as children, but it's going to matter in their relationships as adults when they actually are having, romantic relationships with someone else.
Or any kind of intimate relationship. Because if you, let's say, just for the sake of saying this, that the most acceptable hierarchy in a family is father, mother, then children, right?
This is an example.
This is an example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this is law, but let's just say it is. So mom emasculates dad. Mm-hmm. And you have 3 boys, 2 girls. Mm-hmm. Each boy is going to experience that differently. Each daughter is going to experience that differently. So when you think about how is that going to affect them when they go outside? Well, if dad is at the top and he's not respected and he's an authoritative figure, when I go out in public, I may not respect my teacher. Mm-hmm. I hate to say this, but I may not respect a police officer. Mm-hmm. And that may cause problems and that's the one child.
Because you're not respecting authority. Because of the structure and the construct you see in your home. The
structure at home is off. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that dad has to be that one or it has to be emasculation. It could be misogyny, and dad could be a complete jerk. And you have one daughter. And what is that daughter going to understand about men and how a man should communicate to her? And when she goes out there, what kind of trouble can she possibly encounter, or situations could she put herself into? Or is it going to be a complete defiance? Mm-hmm. There is a best practice.
Okay. That's
so to speak. I'm not going to say there's 100% assurance in it. And I think that was the importance of the Cosby Show, because a lot of people got to see how a man and a woman can have the roller coasters, the sine waves and the up and downs in the relationship. Children who not are all the same skin complexion, same hair texture, same gender, and they have different aspirations. And how do they deal with that? Mm-hmm. Because we are just coming out of, or let's say, as a people here in America, Black people, I believe are evolving. We're coming out of religious praying on our knees into, I'm gonna still pray, but I'm also gonna go to therapy, and I'm also going to take better care of myself health wise, because nobody can function well if I can't function well.
Right. We're understanding the impact of that we've received, I think, over generations of trauma, and how that's impacting our bodies, and the impact that our food choices have on that, and our activity choices, all of it, and our mental health, and what we're doing to address that. And so we're learning better, and we're doing better collectively. Right. Do we still have work to do? Absolutely. All of us do.
Never stop.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll be back. We are talking with Donnie Maxey, and we're talking about children and modeling behavior, and specifically, how do you do that in difficult relationships? So we'll see you on the other side of the break.
WIIFTBP.
Chicago's Power Hour. I'm your host, Angie Mims, and
Terrence Keys,
TD, aka Terrence Daniels.
I wish I had one witness in the house.
You got one.
Got a couple of them.
Got
two T's.
Give me a testimony.
Oh Lord, he's did it before. Oh Lord,
I got one. Better. I got 5 reasons.
5 reasons. Oh Lord, he turned it around.
Turn it around. He woke me up this morning.
Oh. Don't do this. Don't do this.
Go
number
ahead.
4.
He woke me up this morning.
Come on, number 3. Come.
He woke me up.
Oh, Lord.
He woke you up.
That thing can touch you. One of them 5s will get you. What's the second one?
He woke me up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
And the number 1 reason.
Number 1. Final answer.
He woke me up this morning.
He woke me up this morning.
That's a testimony.
That's a testimony.
Special.
Yeah, man. Ideas, man. Ideas.
You don't have to find me. I'm walking right behind you. It's so clear to see. that you wanna be free. You don't have to find me. I'm walking right behind you. It's so clear to see that you wanna be free.
Let's go.
Standing my ground, I can't mess around. It's like my time is in a bottle, captured by your love. Now I know women's got this thing going on. We can't stay around so long, but I wanna come correct. Baby, get your foot off my neck. You don't have to find me. I'm walking right behind you. Understand clearly that you wanna be free. It's the time.
Hey, welcome back to I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's In It for the Black People Media. This is Tasha Napper here, and I am sitting with Donnie Maxey, and we're having a conversation about modeling behavior for children, especially in difficult and strained relationships. Hey, DJ, I don't know where you're getting these songs from, but that was sweet. I liked it. That's a good stepping song.
That's a little cutter right there. Ain't it?
Yeah, who is that?
If you really listen to like the lyrics, though, it sounds a little stalky. But no, that's you know, he say you don't have to find me. I'm walking right behind.
Right? Yeah.
But no, I think that's Shaun White. That's either
that's Shaun White
or
too.
Slick.
Okay,
Slick J, either one.
That's the one I was thinking it might be.
Slick.
I liked it. I like that. I'm gonna have to add that to the playlist. All right, y'all. So welcome back. I like music.
Okay.
I like stepping. So, you know, we had music a lot of times. I'm over here moving and bobbing and just enjoying it. So, all right. So I want to come back to something you said before the break.
Okay.
In the example you provided, you talked about a hierarchy at home. And just for example, husband, wife, mom, dad, children. And if the dad is supposed to be, from the children's eyes, the authoritative figure, but is being emasculated by the mom, then the children learn not to respect authority, essentially. And they process that in different ways. So you mentioned 3 boys. They might process it 3 different ways. 2 girls, they'll process it 2 other different ways. So I want to come back to that and talk about it a little bit because listeners know, you know, I have 3 boys. So it's always really important to me. And I'm looking for tips for myself, too, around how do I help them to be the best young men that they should develop, they need to develop into, that God has entrusted me to mold these little lives and to do that in the way that, you know, to see what is it that they like and to help steward that. What is it that he's telling me that I need to do for these boys, but how do I help them to walk into the people that God has called them to be? That's important to me, right? And so this whole piece of emasculation, I want to unpack that a little bit. First of all, let's talk about what does that look like? So when we say emasculation, that the woman is emasculating a man, what is the woman doing that's
so a lot of conflict always goes back to power. Mm-hmm. So there's a power struggle.
Yep.
And when you're emasculating a man, basically you're stripping that man of masculine power. And that could come in many different ways, like not listening, you know, always like, you know, he ain't up to no good. All men are dogs. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of negativity that may come out of your mouth, or some of the behaviors you may have, like, you know, the little body language, whatever. Mm-hmm. Things that we could do without.
Okay, so let me. I want to be real clear. So let's say if it's a dismissive tone or a dismissive body motion or language, but something that communicates, I don't respect you, I don't value your opinion or what you're saying, or I'm not going to listen to that, then that comes across to the male as emasculation.
Correct.
And the children see that and they are processing that as, this is not the person that's in charge, this person's in charge.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm struggling with it a little bit as we talk about it.
So
because,
hold on. So the reverse of the opposite end of that is misogyny, right?
Okay.
You have misogynistic men who are just like, all women are B's and H's, and you don't know anything, you can't think on your feet, and just do as I say.
Right.
And you hold no value.
Okay, so you get both of those things. We have the emasculation and the misogyny that could be happening, and the children are seeing this and processing it. And essentially what I'm hearing you say is there does not seem to be this level of mutual respect for the other partner that shows up in the way we speak to the other person, the way our body language is, the things that come out of our mouths, the stuff we say. Any of those ways, then the children see disrespect is basically what I'm hearing you say.
Imbalance. Imbalance. The Bible talks about being equally yoked. That doesn't mean you pull the exact same weight that I pull. That means that we complement each other and we become builders together. I can't start building blocks here and then you come over and you like kick one off. Just kick that Lego off because you're upset about something that I did, and I don't even know what I did to upset you, but you haven't been able to articulate it, so you responded or you reacted to it. Now, you may regret it, or you just may not.
That's a possibility, too.
You may just be like, yeah, it is what it is. I did what I did.
Right.
So, and as far as the concern with men, when
Hey, Reese.
Men like to be fixers.
Reese, we got a camera issue. Thank you.
Men like to be fixers.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to speak. Generally speaking, we like to fix things. We like to be that knight in shining armor and come in and save the day. But nobody can be consistent with that.
Right.
That's impossible. So I think men more so, the ego has to be fed. And I know people hate that, but I'm going to give a horrible example.
We need examples, yes.
I'm going to give a horrible example. So why do men go pay for intimacy? Why do they pay for it? Because they want that fantasy moment where they feel like they're being appreciated and their ego is stroked. And they keep coming back because in that business, that ego is being stroked. And that may be the one thing that they're missing. I don't think every man just wants to go out and just do something wrong and have multiple women. Some men do. I'm not nothing against polyamorous.
Poly is a thing these days.
Nothing against that. It's just that some men just they want that one, and I think that's a lot of pressure on people these days, is to be the one because of everything that our black women have to deal with,
right,
and face. It's a struggle, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot that black men have to deal with and face. And if you remember Good Times, Dad always came home and he always had the scowl on his face. Always had a scowl on his face. It's because that pressure.
Tired, just being black in America, it's a lot.
There are days I not being, culturally black, but being systemically black is exhausting.
It is, absolutely.
Being in the tax bracket of black is exhausting. And what I've done personally to try to help balance the power is I communicate these things. Like if I experience a microaggression at work, thank you technology, I share it with my kids. Like, you're not going to believe this.
It's so interesting. I actually was having a conversation like this with my kids the other day because we were driving in the car. This is a sidebar from what we're talking about, but it's important because we have to teach them these things and how to navigate the world, right? So we're driving. We're on a very narrow street with parked cars on both sides. This woman is coming in my direction in a Porsche SUV, and I'm headed in my direction in my SUV in the opposite direction. She's a white woman. But she is not moving her vehicle over to accommodate both, right?
Stand your ground.
And so I'm in the car now. I'm saying, like, move over. You just what you want me to just move? Like, move over. And you're driving the Porsche. If you're scared to drive it, then And so she motioned something to me, but it was clear that her expectation was to keep driving and for me to move out of her way.
But that's a power situation.
Exactly. And I explained it to the kids. because I reacted to it and had lots to say in the car. And I said, what you just saw, unfortunately, was the dynamic that exists a lot in America, where people who are in the majority will expect for you to move out of their way. Now, she didn't stop her car and pull over in a way for me to move, to keep going and then go ahead. She stood her, and I said, and I stood my ground. I said, I want you guys to pay attention and call this out. This happens on the sidewalk often. When you're walking in a direction, and there may be 4 people lying across the sidewalk, and their expectations that you're going to move over into the grass. I said, you'll notice I don't do that. I will stand there.
Yeah, that's
or I will move forward. So yeah, that's another discussion, right?
It's still power.
It's a power struggle.
It's still power.
But it's also helping them recognize the imbalance. And there are times that you have to see what's happening that's not maybe the obvious thing and stand your ground.
And each one of them receive that message differently.
As kids will. So, okay. So the kids, let's go back to it because I digress, right?
So I can go back to that. I can just jump right from that. So even in that situation, let's just say that it wasn't you and the lady in a Porsche. It was you and your husband or ex-husband walking in a doorway. Okay. And it's a power struggle. Like, I was here first. It's like kids in a line. Like, I was in the line first.
Right. I was in first. So, I want to be at the head of the line.
So when the child in you emerges or erupts, what do? How do you handle that situation? Do you have a blackout where you just allow the inner child to take over? Or do you black out and say, if I just move to the side, does that mean that I'm weak? Or does that just mean that this isn't that important to have a situation? I'm moving to the side. It's not that important for me to have a situation.
Right.
But just like in a situation with the car, it's because of the history of what systemically black and white people have gone through.
Right.
You have a position to say, I will not be moved. I'm going to stand my, and you keep hearing that because even when you hear about, police officers being in fear there, or some people, our brothers and sisters of less melanin in the South, they're standing their ground. What are you standing in your ground for? Is it that important to stand your ground? You have to pick and choose your battles. And a lot of people think that that's for like big issues. No, it could be something very petty and small.
All right. So let's keep talking with this. I'm going to give you another example.
Okay.
All right. So I got boys. I'll use that as an example.
I have 3 boys too and a daughter. So
yes. So
I'm in a 3-boy gang.
All right. So let's talk about how this plays out in terms of the mom as well. So mom asks boys to do something. Boys don't respond and do. Mom asks again. Boys don't respond and do. Dad is watching the entire interaction. Dad asks boys to do something different. Boys respond immediately, hop to it, do it. All right. So my inclination as mom is I'm about to light into both of y'all because this is some bull. Right?
So you're playing that chess game in your head already as to how you're going to respond and react versus saying respectfully, he did not usurp your authority with the children by stepping in and saying, hey, look, I'm the head. I have spoken. Listen to me despite your mother. To me, that's not productive. What the kids should understand, or the children should understand, is that mommy's going to ask you to do things. And as long as that's the right thing to do, you're going to do it. Secondly, as a dad, I'm always like, in my presence, buddy, you're going to do whatever the adult asks you to do. Especially if I'm sitting right here, because you don't want me to get involved.
Right.
So you have a lot of things going on there. I don't want to be the default to punishment
exactly.
or reprimanding. I want it to be like, your mother is a parent just like me. She's not just for the cuddling, the hugging, and kissing boo-boos and all that crap. No, I can kiss boo-boos too. I can give you some Neosporin.
Right.
I'm good with rubbing on the ointment with a Q-tip, but you can't just say, "Oh well, this is mom, and you can pick and choose."
Right.
So another part of that is how is your interaction with him? Do the children witness you picking and choosing when you're listening to him, and how he's presenting himself? Is he presenting himself in a positive way, or is he presenting himself negative, which then dictates or can predicate how you're going to respond to him? Because if dad's petty and a nitpicker and all that stuff, and it's really getting under mom's skin, mom is going to tune him out. And you know what? I really commend the power of a woman to tune a man out. That is so fantastic. I still don't understand it. It is a superpower, but it does amazing things to men. Because somehow we get the message and we either act right or
we stop.
We do some stupid stuff.
Right.
But most of us want to act right.
So I asked that question because I'm seeing oftentimes this power play that happens with divorced parents, right? Where one parent wants to be the favored parent and garner
Loyalty.
all of the they're trying to garner all of the love or the fun or whatever it is with the kids.
Loyalty.
Say more about loyalty, because it's
I'm
a very unhealthy
loyalty.
thing. It's a very unhealthy thing that's happening. And so it's almost like, well, I want them to like me more so that I don't get it. Maybe it's if something happens, I want them to choose me, which seems very juvenile, but we see people do this all the time.
Or you want to disprove the stuff that's coming out of the other person's mouth. Like, they're saying this about me, and look, I'm your mama. You know, you know how those conversations go.
Right.
Or the dad will be like, well, you know, I'm your dad and I love you just like your mom, but you know. So all these little conversations and these inner children inside of us in the line at school, I'm first in line, that inner child keeps coming out. And it's the system again. We you know, we are buried deep in this trash of this culture and this society about things that we don't know and understand because our culture was ripped from us, and we don't have a lot to fall back on. Come to find out that the people who ripped our culture from us are emulating that culture that they ripped from us.
Right. So interesting.
And we don't know, like, everybody should like most religions that come out of Africa because it's all our religion. It's all our people in some shape, form, or fashion. And some of the values that we have abandoned are in those documents, whether I haven't read the Quran, but I know in the Bible it is.
Very true.
And you have to think about, you know, African proverbs, like, where do they come from? It takes a village. And it does. You can't do this all by yourself. And people who think they're doing it by themselves are clearly fooling themselves. So when you go back to that situation and you think about, hey, am I being petty? I am. Let me stop.
Right.
It's never too late to correct yourself because it can escalate. But by that time, the other person's like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to jump in and get my piece in.
Yes.
And understand that that's part of the process. You may not want to hear what's going to be said, but it's probably going to be said. And then you have to say, you know what? I hear you. That's when you turn off your talking and become a listener. Because the more rope you give somebody, that opportunity they have to hang themselves. It's just the way things go.
All right. So we are nearing the end of the show. I don't think this is nearly enough time to cover everything that we wanted to talk about, but I like to always give listeners tools at the end of the show. And for parents who are dealing with divorce and managing through difficult interactions that are strained, managing through this, I want to be the favorite parent or liked more by the kids, or this imbalance that's happening when essentially the parents aren't co-parenting in a way that's
productive.
most constructive as it is, as constructive as it could be. I'll say it that way because it's complicated. Everything that we're talking about is very complicated, right? And so I want to give people tools. And one of the things we talked about first was therapy and how important
That's
that
number
is.
one.
And I like that you kept going back to this inner child in us because that child does come out at times and we recognize it sometimes. And we'll say things like we're being petty or, how old are we today? Just whatever it is, right? So it's understanding that happens. That comes out, that happens. And therapy can help us to understand ourselves at a deeper level so that we can best manage that.
But it's not just going to therapy. You have to be very honest and vulnerable.
Yes.
I think that's one thing we didn't say here is be vulnerable. And be careful who you're vulnerable with. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, when your partner's upset or you can't trust your partner, that's not the person to be vulnerable with.
Right.
But you can't start to really heal unless you're vulnerable in therapy. And I was doing therapy really, really wrong. I even told my therapist, man, I'm supporting you because you're a black woman. I don't really need help. I mean, I was cocky about it. Like, ain't nothing really wrong with me. And this is just, I'm being honest, because I thought that I was doing everything right.
I'm sure she was like, oh, boy, we got one.
This dude need a lot of help. But then and I'm gonna be real quick with this. So during the pandemic, I was laying on a table and getting my acupuncture, and I freaked out. Like, I was like, wait, you're not gonna turn on some music for me or anything? I gotta sit here in the silence and just sit here with these needles in me? I freaked out, and that was the point in time I was like, hey, I got some anxiety issues. And from that point on, I started saying I need to be more honest about what's going on and understand. And then as you sit down and write, that's another thing we didn't say. Get yourself a little journal or something and write your stuff down and keep it under lock and key if you have to. If you have a laptop, you have notes on your phone, but write down some of these issues. One tool that I didn't mention is that if you're really upset and you're arguing via text, sometimes you can't respond. Mm-hmm. You can't react, but you can rethink. So what you should do is write down the text you want to send, sit on it, and if you're still upset about it 24 to 48 hours later, then maybe you can have a much calmer conversation about it versus, nah. You using all your fingers like it's a QWERTY keyboard. Just take a break and breathe.
All right.
And also find outlets.
All right. So we're going to have to end it there. And those are the tools that we wanted to share, and really sharing those so that you can be better on the other side. Thanks for joining us today on I Do, I Did, I Don't. And we'll see you again next Sunday. Oh, look at this. He brought me a gift. I don't think I've ever gotten a gift from a guest. So thank you very much. And I like Garrett's popcorn.
I'm giving you your flowers.
Thank you, Donnie.
In the form of popcorn.
All right. All right. We'll see y'all. Thanks a lot.
Your body, and I'll be caressing your body. Oh, baby, come on, loving your body. I'll be loving, feeling your body. And I'm gonna touching your body all night, baby. Now I'm about to fulfill your fantasy.